within their own club based around the 6 merit-based projects: child opportunities, youth opportunities, camps, school initiatives, learning development, and talent academies. Okay, so we're going to just have a look at the planning cycle here. Something that a club would do if they took part in this program. Where club currently is, they do a SWOT analysis. From the SWOT analysis, it would give us direction of where we want to go to, how we measure the different projects we might put in place, and then a review at the end of the year. In it also is a club coaching and games audit, so you can probably see it there on your own screens there. There's loads of different, it looks for loads of different information and would help direct the club. It would, underneath it here, the number of kids attending your local primary schools, how many is actually playing with your club, how many teams you'd have, and so on down there. In the SWOT analysis here, you all know what a SWOT analysis is. So the strengths and weaknesses will be internal to the club, and the opportunities and threats will be external to the club. Coming from the opportunities and threats, you'd have roles and responsibilities for the different projects that will come from that. So every club is going to be different. Every club's needs are different. But this is available on the Connacht GAA coaching website. If you just Google it, go into the coaching section, and you can download this. And just we just said we've so many on tonight that we just draw your attention to a really, really useful manual or program that clubs can implement when they're setting up their coaching committees or planning for the year ahead. Okay, so I'm just going to hand over to Paddy Griffin and to Donal for tonight's main session. So thanks, Paddy.
Gurmag, Dennis, just before we start, just a bit of housekeeping there, folks, just to make sure everyone's devices are muted. There's just a few there that haven't been muted, so just so that we can clearly hear Donal and everyone gets the most out of Donal's talk this evening. Just to make those that are on this evening's webinar aware that due to the huge interest this evening, and I suppose the vast amount of questions that were forwarded in the last few days, it wouldn't be possible to go through every single question one by one. So what Donal has done, he's put a few slides and headings together, and hopefully that a lot of the questions that were asked and the answers and the learnings you're looking for, that they'll be hit there, and I'll put a few more questions to Donal after he's gone through those headings, and hopefully through that everyone can take away something, as I said, from the webinar this evening. I suppose, Donal Ardous, thanks a million for your time, but before we go through the, I suppose, nitty-gritty of this evening's presentation and your experiences of preparing a club or intercounty team, for those who mightn't be familiar with you, you might give us a brief outline of your own background, I suppose, and your route into coaching.
Yeah, look, thanks Paddy, and thanks Damien, and thanks Dennis for the introduction there. Look, there's a lot of guys, I suppose, on this that I know, and this will be my first kind of webinar, I suppose.
Sorry, a minute, Donal. Just Dennis, will you stop sharing there, please? Sorry, Donal.
Donal's putting up his presentation there, Damien. Yeah. You're good to go. Okay. Yeah, you're good, Damien.
Okay, look, just to introduce, I suppose, myself in relation to this. It's I've started, I suppose, pretty long time ago. I won't bore you with it, but I suppose with Parking Conroy, Fado and development squads, and I suppose being a teacher by trade, we would have been involved in coaching as well and all that. So going back to development squads is a long time ago now. I'm not sure exactly of the year, but look, I've worked my way up, I suppose, through squads and through minors and 21s and 20s, and involved at senior level as well, and I suppose with Spittle with minor 21 teams and junior and intermediate and now senior and stuff like that. So that's basically it, I suppose, just in relation to that. So look, I'll I suppose work away, Paddy, will we?
Yeah, we can fire into it. I suppose Just looking through the questions there, Donal, I suppose a lot, if we go back to the start, a lot of people are interested in, I suppose, when you start out with the team, what's the first thing you look at, I suppose, when you're starting with the new team? What's the most important aspect or priority when you start working? And I suppose, how do you create a buy-in with the new team? Especially, I suppose, if your methods might differ to previous management. How do you set off when you go into a dressing room for the first time, I suppose?
Yeah, that look at on the questions that came up a lot, Paddy, and look at in relation to this, guys, it's just thinking about it when Dennis asked me to do something like this. To be honest, I was a little bit apprehensive, but in thinking about it as well, we've all kind of been listening to webinars maybe over the last while, and we're kind of a little bit of downtime with COVID and all that. But look at if guys, I suppose to assist coaches is the best thing, and to reinforce. There's a lot of coaches, and I'm no expert in relation to coaching, and by any stretch of the imagination. What I do have, I suppose, is why I'm probably talking now, is I have a lot of experience over the years in relation to development squads and county squads and club level. So you know what I mean. That's what we're going to share, or I'm going to try to share with you tonight in relation to it. And you know, I've spoken to guys over the last couple of days, even guys to Enda and Paddy and to Cian in relation to our under 20 panel at the moment. Spoke to them in relation to questions and the questions that came up. But what I've tried to do over a couple of slides here, and to keep it as short as we can, is broken up into three parts really. And the first part is in relation to management. Second part will be just talk about players. The third part we'll talk just a bit about coaching. And at the end then we'll go through just a general match day, what we would do on match day. And if I can share the screen towards the end again as well, I might just put up an itinerary in relation to what we would normally do on match day. And it's just a general overview, guys. I hope you find it useful. It's in relation to club. It's not just county. Basically, in relation to club, where we would have, or I would have club, or be involved with club, it would be a step up in relation to resources and I suppose expertise and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of the stuff that we would do at Intercounty nowadays, like clubs are doing as much, if you ask me, you know, especially progressive clubs in relation to coaching, definitely, because there's a lot of stuff out in relation to coaching. And look, I'm not going to be boring you with quoting guys and all that. I wouldn't be a huge with family life the way it is at the moment for me, anyways. For research and stuff like that, I wouldn't be up to date maybe on some of the modern day stuff. But as I said, look, we'll go through as much as we can here, and hopefully you can pick up something with it. To me, guys, just if you look at the slide is up, I hope you can see that if too small on a hybrid, we put up the bit of Irish, just in case we might get if we feel a bit of Irish, Paddy, we might get a grant out of it or something. But
absolutely,
because I think the too small on a hybrid, guys, is important. And to me, when those questions came up, the first thing that came to mind is management team. Now, look at sometimes, and you know, not all the time, especially in development squads and maybe at inter-county level at a minor age or whatever, you might, you know, management might be thrust upon you. You mightn't have the chance. But usually, you know, you probably get to pick your own, maybe at club level and all that sort of stuff. To me, it's absolutely vital. And Damien mentioned it there to the guys, to Mike and Tommy, who I think are on this evening. And then I'm not sure if any of the management team of this year. It's so important, okay? And that's one of the things, the first thing that I have there is the good people. Because one of the things that I know guys that do these seminars and all that sort of stuff, coaching the people, I think Jeff did something last week in relation to it. It's so important, and it'll be one of our sort of mantras that, you know what I mean, you're preparing the team, fair enough, but the team is full of individuals, you know. So having good people around you, okay, is important, okay. And to me, a small backroom team, less is more for me, definitely, to keep it as tight as you can, okay. Just in relation to that, for example, obviously with COVID and everything, this year, we managed ours was so tight. We've just about managed to get everyone into Croke Park this year in relation to the All-Ireland final, for example. You know, we didn't have to do a Mayo on it and bloody put fellas in the back of a van or anything like that. But I think that's important. I don't personally like big backroom teams. Sometimes you need such and such, and all that. I suppose senior teams are different and all that. Second thing I have there, guys, is in relation to the people that you have. Since we're trying to develop people as well as footballers and all that, their roles need to be clearly defined. The support team, that is, okay. And I'm looking down at kit gear there in relation to the kit. Like, that to me is one of the most important jobs, right? They're there before I'd be there. They're at, the time that they put in would probably be more than most players. It's an important job in relation to that. So might be overlooked by other people. Definitely wouldn't be overlooked on any setup that I would be involved in. And these are little details that you mightn't think of. I don't know, people mightn't think of it and all. I'm talking about training. I'm talking about match day, and all that sort of stuff. And Tommy is on there. Tommy's our kit man. He would be a brother of mine. He'd be involved in coaching as well. He'd be on it there. Like, he is so important to us, and Mike Dunn does help him out as well. So it's a huge job. Okay. And also, I have the word observation there. I think that's a role as a manager, and it's one of the things that I'd be doing is have guys at training to observe as well. And if your kit man is someone that knows football and all that sort of stuff, he can be an ear and an eyes around a camp as well in relation to that. Standards of behaviour, I suppose, respect, loyalty, all that sort of stuff is so important. Again, in relation to, I don't know if I can say, no bullshit around the whole setup is important to me, right? So that it's stories coming out, you know what I mean? The players liking the guys or respecting them, all that sort of stuff. I think that's important. There's a good energy as the next one. Then energy and enthusiasm is another one that's important. The guys aren't in moping around, you know what I mean? Don't want to be there maybe, or kind of have. Maybe they do want to be there, but their body language might suggest otherwise. I don't know. Okay, so look at this stuff like that. And
I suppose, Donal, not to cut across it, but I suppose that works both ways then as well, doesn't it? From a player's point of view and from the management team as well, that they stick to those principles as well, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Look at players. We'll talk about players down the line, but just in relation to our management, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Look at the enthusiasm and the energy is important, because that rubs off, because again, you're dealing with people, you know what I mean? Look, we're in the middle of a pandemic at the moment. There's a lot of doom and gloom, but I suppose it's our nature sometimes to be negative, to be kind of, it's very easy to pick holes and stuff. So that would be important to us as a management at the moment, and has been over at club level and the same sort of just get good people around you, Paddy. That's like not that they have to have an exceptional knowledge about football or anything like that. It's just good role models for the guys, good personalities, all that sort of stuff. I think that feeds into it. And it'll come down the line again. We'll be chatting about setting the atmosphere. We have it down there. That's one of the things that I firmly believe in, and it comes up in the answer to a load of questions that were put. Is creating an atmosphere. I'm jumping down my own thing there. Creating an atmosphere is so important. We'll mention it in relation to coaching, where you a learning atmosphere, and I suppose it comes from the teaching background as well, where guys need to be able to learn. We're talking about online learning at the moment, and this is what we're doing, throwing up stuff. We're throwing stuff at young leaving certs or whatever the case may be. It's not ideal. There's no interaction, so it's not ideal. So when we do get back to, on the pitch and all that sort of stuff, creating an atmosphere at the beginning is absolutely vital. Okay. And we have the word crack there. And again, I think it's important, because if you're not enjoying it, you know what I mean? If you're not enjoying it, it's difficult to do your job. It's difficult for guys, because young guys, young men, whatever you want to call them, they're smart enough. They see what's going on. So, the beginning of it is very important. That atmosphere within the group, we'll talk about that again. But I'm talking about, again too, at the beginning here, we're talking about management. This is all about management. Even though all of this stuff overlaps into players and into coaching and all of that. This is just a management thing for me, you know, and you might say, geez, it's an awful lot or whatever. But to me, it's important because these are the guys you're going to be hanging around with for, you know, maybe for years, you know, that kind of way, or whatever, if you're lucky enough to be, you know, successful or to stay on in jobs or whatever the case may be. So I think it is. And just the last one there, in relation to County Board, I suppose, to Kevin and to Mary that are on there, and Pat, the relationship with them, or if you're at club level with your chairperson, or your secretary or whatever the case may be, I think that relationship is very, very important as well. That, you know what I mean, that we're all in this together and all that. And sometimes, obviously, you know, you'd have disagreements and all of that sort of stuff. But again, that relationship, I think, is important, because, you know, you might have battles or with your chairperson, depending on personalities. I suppose my own personality wouldn't be confrontational or whatever the case may be. But, you know, there would be disagreements with everyone. And that's, I'm talking about selectors, I'm talking about, you know, county boards or chairpersons or in your club, or I'm sure, you know, you don't always agree with what the chairperson or secretary might come up with or whatever the case may be. But my advice would be that relationship is very, very important, no more than your relationship with the players, which we'll come to down the line. But this relationship with your management and with the guys, and I'd put county board and chairpersons and whoever secretaries within your club or within the county, whatever, that relationship is very, very important, because if that relationship isn't good, it hinders development. I think it hinders the development of the players, because the management won't grow. Like we'll be talking about reflection and all that sort of stuff down the line, but that's why Tú Smáile na Hybrid is, you know, the heading here, because if you have a good start in relation to this, and you probably notice we are not even talking about football or coaching or anything like that before, and you know, that's what I firmly believe in, to be organized, to get everything, you know, kind of started well, and get the good people around you, and get the show on the road, shall we say. Yeah. All right.
Well, they say, Donal, that first impressions last a lifetime, so that's a useful point. As you said there, we might move on to players, Donal, and I suppose we got a lot of questions in the last week in terms of the relationship between management and the players, and how do you create that atmosphere that players want to thrive in. So you might hit on that for the next few minutes, please.
Yeah, look, I'll try, Paddy, is I suppose the answer to that one, because it's a difficult one. And look at all the coaches that are listening today. You have different teams, different dynamic within teams, and you know, you're successful, and all of a sudden everything is right and all that sort of stuff. It's not like that, and the coaches that are listening and will testify that, I'd imagine it's difficult. It is difficult. You know, every group is difficult. It's not going in and do one thing. Like in relation to, you know, this year we won the under-20s, for example. You know, we could have lost that game just as easily the year before at minors. You know, you win, you lose games. But what you need to have is your philosophy, and you need to have, you know, you need to believe in what you're doing and all that sort of stuff you'd hear. But it is important in relation to that. Now, just in relation to players, you know, from a management point of view, you have all your meetings done, you have your management in place, all the stuff, the boxes ticked in relation to roles, all that sort of stuff. So the next thing, you know what I mean, at club level, you'd be, you know, talking about players, or at Intercounty, you'd be doing trials, you'd be doing whatever in relation to it. So all that's done, and then you're meeting with your players and all that. And again, just back to the Thús, and the beginning is very important. Okay, again, my opinion, I suppose. So meet with the players and introduce background team players. You know, obvious stuff. I know you might think it's obvious stuff, but what happens at that first meeting can dictate a lot. You know, I believe in that, because just to be careful with what you say, because sometimes we go in, and I've done it myself over the years. You go in with a lot of energy, you go in with a lot of adrenaline maybe, and yeah, geez, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and off we go. Look, I can't wait to get started, blah blah blah, and all this sort of stuff. And after a couple of weeks, kind of things go wrong, or whatever the case may be. So look, gather your thoughts is what I would be saying. Okay, the first meeting is very, very important. It doesn't have to be a long meeting. You know, you go back to your Jim McGuinness Fado when he had his big long meeting in whatever, in some hotel. There's a legendary story there. just in relation to that, probably short. This is what my opinion would be: short meetings, and meet regularly, obviously throughout a year. Okay, not overdoing it or anything like that. But the first meeting would be short, and the personal reason I would have for that is, like, you got to get to know your players, right? So if you're going in saying A, B, C, and D, and you know what I mean, and you don't know the players that well, or you get to know them over a period of time. So what I would usually do is just to outline the fundamental messages of philosophies, blah, blah, like, okay, so the word philosophy, for example, I hear that word. If I was on this listening to me, I hear a philosophy. What does that mean? Culture, all that sort of stuff. I'll try and explain it and what I mean by it in relation to what we do. For example, I'll give an example in relation to development squads, which, as I said, we started development squads a long time ago. They've improved, in my opinion, and got better and better as the years have gone on. A lot of good coaching going on there, and a lot of good coaching, and that's another kind of myth in relation to coaching. You win something at intercounty level. Who does the work? You guys that are listening to me do the work. You're the club coaches, well, myself included, I suppose, but it's the club. We're kind of the finish. We finish it off maybe, and we might get a bit of glory over it and all that sort of stuff. But it's the coaches in the clubs that do the work, and I know it. I'm in it myself. You know what I mean? So just it's important to get that point across. But just in relation to development squads, for example, the philosophy we would have had, Paddy was with Paddy with development squads as well. The philosophy for that, for me, would be, you'd think, if you ask the kids, what would they say? What to play for Galway? That wouldn't even be next to near. If I was talking to a 14 squad or 15 squad, maybe 16, you might be mentioning it, or 17s obviously, but definitely not with the younger squads. The philosophy would be short. It would be, improve as a person and as a footballer. That's why you're here. This is what I'd be telling them. You know what I mean? That sort of stuff. Positive attitude. I have these written down. A willingness to learn. Go back to your club a stronger, better person, and share your knowledge. Sinead, that's what I would. That's the philosophy. It's a fancy word for it, but it's the messages. Philosophy to me is the messages you're giving, right? And what makes it a philosophy for me as well is that you follow up on that. That you're not just saying it for the sake of saying it because you heard me saying it, or you heard somebody saying it on a webinar, because you actually believe in what you're doing, right? You're trying to improve them as a person. What does that mean? It means that they have manners. They say stuff like that. That's part of it. And even at under 20 level, we'd be like, we're not kind of mooch or scholar with them or anything like that, but there's codes of behavior, and that goes back to the guys that are, working with you. That's why, we're talking about management and stuff like that, that the atmosphere around there creates, a certain behavior. And that's what that's what I would see as philosophy and culture and that every group would have the potential, and every player, and that's a message that, especially for development squad or at club level or underage level, the word potential, I think, I remember doing courses years ago, and that word always stuck with me, potential. Okay, and that comes with you all the way through to intercounty level as well, because, you get guys in, such and such, Jesus, he was on the Ted Webb team, he was this, that, and the other, and, brilliant, yeah, he's a mate, he's great. Then he comes as far as maybe minor or 20s, and he's, not so good anymore. So everyone has potential, but is the work going in? Are the right messages going into their head? Remember, they're getting messages at home as well. So it's important that the messages that we're given to players, whether it's club or whatever, that those messages are spot on. And that's why, again, back to management and back to this sort of stuff, you got to be ready. You got to be ready for that first meeting. You got to be, you know what I mean? The management team might take 2 months to get together. It doesn't matter. It's got to be right. The first meeting, it's got to be right as well. So just that's an example of maybe of a short example of a philosophy of culture. For the 20s, I'd say this year, if I, go through, what we wanted again, a lot of the same stuff. We started a long time ago, I suppose, but develop people was one of them. Obviously, the positive influence, and away from the sessions that you're working on your skills as well, the same sort of thing, that they'd be comfortable doing that, and the life skills as well. And what was that? What was that? We started off, I remember, around October, November, was it? Whatever it was, how many years ago it was now, But one of the things was the guys were very busy studying and juggling and all that sort of stuff. So that was a part of our philosophy for that group, which was make sure you do your stuff. Don't worry about training. Get your project done. And the boys would be coming, they'd be feeling bad, and they'd almost leave the schoolwork and go train. And that's the kind of attitude some of them would have had. But no, we wouldn't allow it anyways. But you know what I mean? They do their stuff and they come back when they're ready. And that we were there for them. And it was so important, I think, for them that they knew that, in relation to that. So that's what I mean. I don't know if that explains to guys what a philosophy is. That you have to really think about it. It's not something you take out of someone else's book, or oh, Jesus, that's what your man's doing, so I'll do that. It's something you got to talk to with your management, something you got to believe in, all that, and the culture and all that sort of stuff. I think it's important. Maybe I've kind of over time a bit on that now, but I think it's important as a starting point. You know what I mean? That's clear. Obviously, don't overload with information. Learn from each other, all that sort of stuff. Limiting distractions. That's not easy. It's one of the messages that they have to limit the distractions. It's not easy when they're working or school and whatever, in relation to that. But that you're there as a support and a care. This is the messages in the first meeting now. The well-being and the juggling that I mentioned already. That you're there as a help, not a hindrance. And you have to be training now. That kind of attitude wouldn't be. Again, this would be our attitude. We'd like them to have the balance, and we'd like the education is important, all that sort of stuff. Just on nutrition and injuries in S&C, guys, in relation to S&C, I suppose at intercounty level and at club level now, there's guys with expertise there. So I'm not an expert on S&C or anything like that, but it is important, to make them stronger, all that sort of stuff. Nutrition, even at club level, there's so much available. So clubs are way ahead in relation to a lot of stuff. And injuries and the education in relation to injuries and all that. There's a lot of stuff, that you can help players with if you're prepared to put in the work, get expertise in, if obviously funds allowed at club level or whatever the case may be. There's a lot you can do. Like it's not rocket science. It's, again, if you have the will, and players will appreciate it, and it's all part of the player, minding the player, making them better, and then they feel better. They hold on a second, geez, this guy or these guys are trying to help us as best they can to be better footballers, better people, and you get more back. That's the kind of thinking behind it, Feedback, engage. This again will come up. A lot of these things will come up again, guys, in relation to feedback, engage, listen, communication, video. Okay, what's all of that? Basically, you're talking about the feedback from players. You got to listen to players, what they want, engage and listen to them. It'll come in the coaching as well. It's a big thing in coaching that we do as well, is listening to them, engaging, all that sort of stuff. Communication is key. Just in relation to video, I'm kind of got a bit over time on that now, but just in relation to video, I know, just look at intercounty level, we have Huddle and Keen, there's a lot of stuff like that is available to us, right? Probably, if I'm to be totally honest, don't use it as much as I like to. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff there and that's what something like this does to you guys. I was chatting to a couple of guys. You learn a bit about yourself doing a preparation for this, because what I learned in the last couple of days was all the stuff I'm not doing, not as opposed to the stuff we do. You kind of learn the stuff we don't do. But look, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the stuff that we do it right. That'd be our fundamental kind of thing to do anyways. But just in relation to videos, sorry, to just finish on that, Paddy, it's something you can do. I know it's something, Michael, we're involved in Spittle. It's something we brought in the last few years. We didn't have any packages or anything like that. We just, the games were taped. We used to take, Oisin used to take bits out of it and whatever and chat about it. It wasn't about, what was on the video. It was engaging the guys. It was making them part of it. The heading of this is players. It was about the players. It's about them feeling the ownership of it. Back up to education, nutrition, that they're being helped to, that injuries, if you're not eating right or whatever, or injuries are going to be worse, or that kind of educate them in relation to their body and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you can do there. You can get talkers in or whatever the case may be, and it's just little things to help teams along in relation to their education and feeling a part of it. All right. Sorry, Paddy, I kind of went over a bit on that one there, I think.
No, and I think the few points you hit Donal there in terms of philosophy should, I think that's very important. It probably hits home that maybe winning a cup at underage level, probably, as you said there, it kind of takes away from the long-term plan, I suppose, of what you're about, and that's important.
Look,
what you hit there in the philosophy side of things.
Most coaches are there for the right reasons, Paddy, and you know what I mean. You gotta, and players know that, you know what I mean. So look, it's about helping them as best you can. That's the main thing, you know.
And in terms of feedback there, Donal, you mentioned the feedback from players. How important was it to make them feel involved? Is there a line then there? Are you conscious of the amount of feedback you're getting, that there's not a line crossed in the sense that there's too much feedback and there's a bit of dictation going on, if you know what I mean?
Look, once you're looking for feedback, once you're trying to engage guys, it's very difficult to control that. Personally, Paddy, I don't mind that.
Yeah.
Because more feedback for me, it's like the bloody teaching at the moment. If they don't need to talk back to you, it'd be great. So, and look, for yourself, for teenagers or 18, 19, 20-year-olds, getting them to talk, like some of them, there'll be players on this year's, I hardly even heard them talk, maybe, that kind of way. And we try to communicate, I try to get around to guys, chatting to them and all that sort of stuff, but you don't, and there'll be players over the years that probably, you never talk to me, or this, that and the other. But look, that's the objective, that's the philosophy, and you know what I mean. Feedback is, I've never had that trouble in relation to too much feedback. It's not enough, you know what I mean. It's not enough sometimes in meetings.
And I suppose, Donal, it makes them take ownership of it. I suppose that's the point there.
That's the big one. Yeah, look, that's we get on to coaching, and that's making decisions, ownership, all that sort of stuff. That's what you want from them, you know.
Yeah. One of the points you hit there, Donal, and we might move on to the coaching. I'll just stick with the time, but a lot of questions on coaching. I suppose the balance between football and drills and the likes. You mentioned S&C there. We got a lot of questions in terms of S&C. What would be the ratio in terms of S&C and skill work and the likes? So you might hit on that for the next few minutes.
Well, yes, I'll try my best anyways. No, look, generally, just to get on to the coaching, Paddy, here, I suppose there's a lot on what Paddy said there on S&C. I was chatting to Cian today in relation to a lot of stuff. To be honest, obviously I wouldn't be an expert on that, and at intercounty level we get the expertise in. We have Cian Brannock at the moment, Nathan Claffey doing our S&C, or great guys. Not only obviously they're Galway people and all that, but they have an interest in Galway football, which is, we're so lucky to have them. So look at my advice in relation to that would be, get advice from guys like that. You know what I mean? Like a lot of guys, even within a club, they don't have to be training the team. They don't but they can help. There's a lot of guys out there that are in that, and they can help, and they're willing to help. Look at the coaches that are listening here at the moment are, as Damien said, they're all volunteers. They're, given their time. There's a lot of people out there that will give that time in relation to it, and with a little bit of common sense and a little bit of science and all that sort of stuff, you're, you can go a long way. And again, players will appreciate that. They'll appreciate you trying your best. Don't be kind of putting pressure on you. Geez, if such and such comes in, that'll be it. You're trying your best to, to make them better footballers, right? To keep them fit, to educate them in relation to football, injuries, nutrition, all that sort of stuff. So look, it's just on coaching, guys. Again, look, you could be talking all day on all of these subjects. Look, forgive us for I try to put down as much as we can to talk in the time allocated. But what we're going through here is just a general, I suppose, the philosophy in relation to our coaching sessions. Enda Daly and Paddy Moore at the moment are our coaching. They're great coaches, guys, super guys, great with the lads. So look, we'll just go through a couple of points here in relation to what we do. Okay. On the left, we can see there is just a general sort of, I suppose, general points in relation to self-explanatory. Okay, organised, obviously. I think we've got that message across from the start, guys. You know what I mean? Organised, being organised is so important with this sort of stuff. It's like, look at, again, from the teaching, you go into a classroom, if you're not ready and organised, they'll know straight away. So it's very difficult to bluff 17, 18-year-olds, I know, in a school setup, and it's very difficult to bluff, footballers as well. So you got to be organised. The purpose is another one. It's one of our themes in relation to coaching and general stuff. The purpose of a session. Okay, I just put in there, set the tone. I just give a little example. What does purpose mean? Obviously, what you want to, what you're doing at that, looking at the other side there, what you're doing on the session in relation to that, or you're working on tackling, whatever the case may be. For example, you have a normal session. Okay, we're training on whatever night, and okay, geez, what are we doing tonight? We're working on tackling. So we'll set the tone. Maybe you'll have your warm up, and you might set the tone by having a short, small-sided game just after the warm up. Maybe just get it a close, tight-knit game at the beginning. Set the tone. Have guys, hitting against each other. You want the intensity up because you're going to be working on tackling and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. That's just a little example of setting the tone for it. Variety is. I'm not a huge fan of variety, to be honest. I know it's important. But I'd be more from the repetition sort of school. But I do understand, and talking to Enda about this as well. We're off the same hem sheet in relation to variety. Yes, change it up, switch it up, but in relation, and we'll chat about just game specific now in a second. But repetition is important as well. Especially when you're working on skill development from a younger age, you know what I mean? That the repetition is there, that, the skills are there, their skills have been toned or honed or whatever the case may be, and that we're, working on them. The guys can see progression and all that sort of stuff. Okay. Competition, just small-sided games, stuff like that. Obviously, we'll just talk about that in a second as well. Obviously, a game we would be big into, from my early days, playing a game, before they ever talked about game specific or all that sort of stuff. We used to be playing games, you know what I mean? So all this coaching, all this new terminology and coaching guys and all, it's been there. Okay, so we're just trying to make it better. I suppose the decision making is the big thing, I suppose, in coaching in the last, from my experience anyways, that what we want them to do now, we'll chat about in a second, is for them to make decisions. Enjoyment, obviously, and I'm talking at every level, and I'm talking about intercounty level. It's so important as well, back to the management and the crack and the good atmosphere and all that sort of stuff. It can be there. It's been there in every setup that I've been in. And we've been successful in some, not successful in others. But I wouldn't be going back. There was a question there on one of the Dennis sent it on today in relation to how do you keep going and how do people, coaches keep going and all that. If there was no crack in it, guys, or the players wouldn't be coming, and definitely management wouldn't be coming either, I suppose. So that's important, that guys are enjoying it, and that it's not the end of the world. That's it. And reflection is just the last one there. To reflect, us as coaches, to reflect on, and we'll go through a little bit on that in a second now. Just a reflection on maybe on a training session. Definitely, obviously the easy one is a game. You reflect on a game as well. But it's important within your sessions that you reflect, and we chat about it in relation. So that's just generally the kind of stuff we do. Just to go a little bit more specific, no more than yourselves, guys. It's the same training session we would have as you would have at your clubs. It's game specific, short-sided games. Bigger games, obviously 4 and 4s, 8 and 8s, you know what I mean, going through all that sort of stuff. 3 or 4 goals out there, changing direction, making decisions. That's what game specific is about. It's about making decisions. You know what I mean? That's important. Different scenarios, mirror the game. So stuff that's how you're trying to mirror what's happening in the game. That's important in relation to it. My message to them, like for example, I would want to ref the game once we're having the game, and I would want to be the ref, because I find myself personally, that's where the real coaching happens, out on the pitch, reffing the game, running with them, giving them that advice. Like my message in a game situation is practice what you do in a game. It's an obvious one. You're saying it yourself. What's going to be happening in a game? That's why we do the small-sided games and the sport-specific stuff. What are you doing? You're running. You're getting back into position. You're going on the loop. You're doing all those sort of stuff during the game. So I like to be out there with them doing that and advising them. Not that I have all the answers, but I you know what I mean. I think they appreciate that too, because another big word we'd have is just reminders, right? You know what I mean? Reminding them, geez, guiding them, well done, geez, well done. We'd have a certain system we would play, and whether we'd have, say, 30 odd on a panel. So out of that, there'll be 10-12% injured, of any, normally, unless it's the week championship, of course, or they're giving out the gear or anything like that. But you could have, 24 at training. And out of that, you could have 2 keepers. So you're left with what? 22. That's 12 aside. So how can you have a game of 12 aside? Absolutely, you can have a game of 12 aside. They're the best games to have, in my opinion, because then I'm in their ear all the time. What would you know what I mean? It's 12 aside. It's very open, but what would you do in the game now? You're reminding them. If you're they have the ball. What do you do? You'd be obviously whatever philosophy you would have or game plan or shape you would have. You'd be getting that message across. But for me, it would be, our messages would be getting back, filling spaces like that when we don't have the ball, just in relation to our game plan. But I think that's something that I would have done all the time. Would have done it years ago as well, and didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? But now, even as I'm getting older, I think it's good, and I think it it works, and it's I didn't realize I was coaching. Maybe back then it was just roaring and shouting, but now it's more coaching and helping guys. That's important. Asking questions, guys, again, just conscious of the time, just going to run through asking questions, challenging the players' decision making. That's what we're trying to make them, to remind them of the responsibilities that they have on the pitch, all that sort of stuff, and the reflection during the session. What we would do, or I would do, we'd stop the session out with lads. Is this good or bad, or you know what I mean? And it's good. Plus, and say it's good. And I'd make a conscious decision as the ref to stop it when it was good. Because they'd get annoyed, they'd even get annoyed at that. They'd say, geez, we keep going because once we're playing well, it's like the playing well, geez, give me the ball when I'm playing well. So sometimes I would say, because I want them to recognize what's good and what's not so good. And they would recognize it. And that's important in the game scenarios, in the game specific stuff as well. Highlight the positive and the negative, and less of the negative, kind of as opposed to, giving out to them. It's, what could we do better? We're making a decision. Was that a good decision? Giving the ball quick. Could have got another pass out of that? You know what I mean? You took the shot on. Was that the best decision? Was there other options? That sort of stuff. Stuff we're all doing already, right? We're all doing it already. It's just to have it in a controlled environment and to have guys buying into it and have them believing that, that you're there to help and all that sort of stuff. Just make sure that they are able to reflect on, on what they're doing in a game. That's the major thing in relation to reflection. But don't be afraid to stop a session or stop a game, during a session. I think that's important. It might annoy them at times, but you know what I mean. I think it's important. And I forgot one thing there. It's important there. If anyone that's done foundation courses or level 1s or 2s or spot and fix. That's what you're doing. You're spotting something and you're trying to fix it. And that's something that I've had for a long time. I remember coaching courses years ago. It was something that stuck with me. You're spotting and fixing. You spot something, whatever it is. It could be a skill that wasn't done well. It could be coming on the loop. It could be a bad decision, and you're trying to fix it. So if you have that in your back pocket as you go out into coaching session with under 6s or with under whatever, you know what I mean? That's something you can take with you all the time. That's in your head, spot and fix. You know what I mean? That's what a good coach does. You break it down for them, you know what I mean? Forwards or backs or whatever, with or without the ball, all that sort of stuff. Kickouts, all those things that you're working on. That's that's important. Okay, to be able to do that. Just in relation to the messages and stuff like that, the messages that you're giving, guys, it's important that they're simple messages. Just give examples again of in relation to ourselves. We would have simple messages that would resonate, that would relate to the whole group. I'll just give an example. I know, Paddy, we're on time now here, but just in relation to a couple of messages that we would have. Stay in the game would be one message that we'd have all the time. Okay, and that can resonate with the cornerback or a corner forward. It means don't, for a cornerback, for example, if it's 2-on-1 and he kind of runs out and he pops it over his head and he's in on goal and bang, it'll be kind of hold your feet, stay in the game, make him make a decision, all that sort of stuff. Good feet would be another one. Having good feet, head, hands, head, hands and feet is a good one, or one we would always have. And that for a corner forward, that's tackling, or for a cornerback, the same sort of thing. So the messages, that's hard runs is one that the guys came up with this year, was hard runs. And the guys that come up with this, we come up with some of them, and we've held them over the years. But hard runs was one that came up. I think it was Colin Sweeney this year that came up with that one. Right? We were talking. I don't forget what we were talking about, but we were chatting about something, and geez lads, he was left isolated, whatever situation it was, and Colin or somebody said, nobody made the hard run. And we said, yeah, we'll keep that one. You got to make the flicking hard run. And that was a big one. You know what I mean? In other words, you have to be selfless. You have, there was a lot in it. The message is simple, but the message triggers something, we hope, in the head of your player and makes them do something that, hopefully that will better the team or whatever the case. And there's other ones, guys, link, you know what I mean? Link, if we shout out to guys, link it up, that they're, they know what it means. Like, it's not kind of a big explanation, that we've all these small messages and we remind them of these messages before games and all that sort of stuff. So we're trying to make life easy for them in a way, but they're making decisions themselves as well. We're reminding them, we're helping them. That's what we're there for. And most of these things come from review meetings. We'd have a meeting maybe after a game, right? Short, in the dressing room, few points up, whatever, just what went wrong, blah, blah, blah. I'd take a picture of it and make sure we'd have that again, up on our chart again, or whatever the case may be. And we remind them that it's them that's coming up with this stuff, not just us. Paddy, sorry, no, I just thought it was important to get that in. I thought that was
absolutely, yeah.
That was sorry, I'm running over time.
And I know one of your philosophies is one of the main points you made there is to relate the good messages as well as the bad messages, because that can create a positive environment in your sessions, and I think that's very important. You mentioned, Donal, you mentioned the game day, and we got a good few questions in about the actual game day, and I suppose what a lot of coaches were worrying about, how do you avoid players that get overhyped, and obviously especially underage players or especially club players before big games, and it's human nature, I suppose, to be nervous and stuff. But as a manager, how do you avoid, or a coach, how do you avoid players getting overhyped, and what would your match day protocol be to try and avoid that, Donal?
I wouldn't know. It'd be into atmosphere. As I was kind of, the atmosphere around. If you see, game day is not. We're around together obviously for a long time, so guys are going to be nervous, and you know what I mean. We chat about it, and we chat about it at meetings and stuff like that. But we try to have the same atmosphere like at game day as you would have normally. That would be our. Why would you change? Would be why would you change? You make it as normal as possible. That's the way I would look at it, because different guys would have different, obviously, nerves and all that sort of stuff. But just we lighten mood. That's the word crack up there. We do lighten the mood. That's right or wrong. That's what we do. Or that's what I would like to do. And I know a lot of guys that are on this and having the crack and messing and slagging and stuff like that. That's what that's what we do all the time. So that's what we keep. We keep doing that. We don't get tensed up and all that sort of stuff before games as a management. So I think that's, again, important that guys say that they can relax and they can, play to the best of their ability, hopefully, because of that. But guys are going to get nervous, and some guys go into their own little world and all that sort of stuff as well, Paddy. You know that. So look at nothing special. Set the tone at the beginning. This is the way you're going to be, your philosophy around training, around the guys, your behavior, all that sort of stuff. And then good luck. Get it right. If you don't get it right, you'll be I
suppose along the same line then we got a good few questions as well in, Donal, about what tools would you use to motivate players in terms of video, or what motivational techniques on your side would you use coming up to match day as well?
Nothing really. The communication, I suppose, is a big thing, I suppose, just in relation to that. I forgot that. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to put up the match day thing. Just in relation to that, Paddy. Sorry to go back on that now. I forgot that one. Okay. Just to go through the match day routine. This is the last one, I think, guys. The match day routine. Keep it simple and have it. And this is for anything. This is for club. And with WhatsApp and all these things you have now, guys, you can put this stuff up. And I might, if I can share the screen again, I might just put up what we would put up. It's simple, kind of for match day itinerary, and we kind of use that for Spittle as well. The last couple of years, I think we did, anyways. I can remember just on the match day that it's important. Obviously, the match day routine. Keep it simple, the habit. Common sense, less is more would be big into. And I've been involved a long time in a lot of county teams, and I think there was a time where we would drive we would go to Loch George for a meal, and we were playing in Pearse Stadium. This kind of, I remember doing that, I think, more than once. So stuff like that, which is, common sense, and then obviously was changed. You'd go to maybe the Salt Hill Hotel, little things like that, things like that would happen. All right. So trial and error as well, feedback and reflection from players on match day. If it's a knockout championship, you mightn't get only the one day out, but it's a match day is very important to get it right. The dressing room, I know at intercounty level, the dressing room is important. Tommy and Cian and Mike Dunn might be there about an hour and a half, 2 hours before the dressing room will be set up, jerseys out, everything set up, all that sort of stuff. You can bring stuff like that into the club. Again, it's all about bringing for that. Okay, these guys really, are trying to look after us, because the player is central to all of this, and everything you're doing, should be, for the player, in my opinion, anyways. Before the match, then, just to go through what we would do, I know there's a few questions on that, Paddy. Reminders is a big one, and reminders of what we were talking about there, staying in the game, going through shape, all the stuff that we, little things. They know it all already, but we're just reminding them of that. I have a chart up in the dressing room. It's probably old school stuff, but I have kind of the flip chart up there, and
probably like the triggers you'd use in your coaching session.
That's it. Exactly. That's it. The triggers. That's it, Paddy. The triggers and all that sort of stuff. Again, reminders, I like to call them. But it's to trigger something in their head. Again, because we forget there's a lot going on, especially on match day. So we have that sort of less is more. If it's a match in Tuam, obviously, come down, whatever. If match in Pearse Stadium, if it's in away from home, we might meet in Loch George, have our meal. If it's Croke Park, we cut out breakfast. We just go, well, they have breakfast at home. We go straight to the hotel 3 hours before we have our meal. By the time that's over, we have a short meeting and off you go to the match. It's simple. It's straight. You know what I mean? It's simple stuff.
It's about reassuring players more than anything, Donal, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. And half time then is just reflection in groups. I might try and put up the itinerary there, Paddy, for a second. And the reflection in the groups, players' perspective. We give them a couple of minutes. We get them in groups, defenders, and stuff like that. Like most teams would do that. Have a reflection, and then the feedback comes from them, because they're out there playing, all that sort of stuff. Players' perspective, and then we give our perspective then as a coaching team. We would chat on the way in, maybe chat outside the door for a minute while they're getting into the groups to gather our thoughts. We would talk to our stats guys, all that sort of stuff, and get some information, but nothing crazy. It's nothing that you wouldn't see yourself. You know what I mean? You fellas probably see more than we would see on match day. You watch a match afterwards, and so cheers, I didn't even see that myself. That's the way it is. That's the way I am. I don't know. I go home, if the match is on TV, I'd watch it on TV, and there'd be stuff I'd see that I wouldn't have a clue. I wouldn't have seen it during the game.
Would you take much from your analysis team, or would you prefer to go with what you see with the naked eye, Donal, I suppose is the question.
Well, analysis team would be, fellas, I would, again, back to the management. You know what I mean? It would be guys you would trust. They would be part of that group, and we would talk beforehand and everything. So we'd be on the same wavelength anyways, Paddy. There'd be, we'd have good guys there, just get, watching the game more so than, for patterns and guys struggling, stuff like that. That's what I would see. That obviously there's stats on stuff and kickouts and stuff like that. We lost this amount and turnovers and all that sort of stuff. But I would be big into perspective on the game and what's happening. Guys burning oil, stuff like that. Guys hurting us. Why are they hurting us? That sort of stuff. You know what I mean? An overall perspective, as opposed to, geez, we had 6 turnovers there. Like, where did we? You know what I mean? I get that stuff, and I think it's important and all that. But I would be, I don't know if it's old school, but it's a perspective on a match, and it'd be reinforcing stuff that we would have seen ourselves. You know what I mean, as well, and maybe we wouldn't have seen, but sometimes you would have seen it. But when you hear it from somebody else, it kind of concretes it in your mind and stuff like that. Because time, it's quick. You know yourselves, half times are quick. Water breaks this year were quick. Everything is kind of bang bang. Good games, even though the last couple of minutes that I learned didn't go that quick, but games go quick. You know what I mean? So you got to be, and that's come with experience too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm watching matches now. The way I watched them 15, 20 years ago, I had no clue what was going on. Now I'm kind of a little bit of the more experience and all that sort of stuff. So if there are young coaches, listen, don't expect to know everything, straight away. Like you'll develop skills, you'll develop tactically, you'll develop everything as you're going on, you know, as you're going along. I think so anyways, you know what I mean? So that's what I did. You know what I mean? I remember I involved in Intercounty the first time was 2004, and like, you know, I can still remember stuff from that, but it's, you know what I mean, I can't remember much, you know. That, so you'll be learning all the way, you know. You'll improve your tactical knowledge, you'll improve, and all of that sort of stuff over time, reading stuff, you know, listening to other coaches, talking to coaches, you know, learning on the job as well is the big one, you know. The more games you're involved in, all that sort of stuff, you know.
Well, they say there's learnings every day you go out. Donal, the clock is against us, so we might just wrap up in the next 5 minutes, and I might hit you with a few quick questions what was sent in to us during the week that probably we didn't hit there in the last few slides, if that's all right.
Yeah,
one of the questions a good few people are asking is, especially with underage squads, players playing a lot of sports, or players playing sports in other squads at the same time, and how do you deal with that and avoid player burnout and keep that motivation in players, and especially, you know, how do you manage that player load, especially with underage players, under 17, under 20 players?
Yeah, look at just there's a lot of that one, Paddy. Look, in relation to playing other sports, first of all, look, I'd have a personal opinion on that, and it would be, yes, obviously we had Conor Flad this year, well documented in the media in relation to that. We had Oisin McCormick playing rugby there a couple of years ago. Oisin had to leave the panel and go playing rugby. He actually came back for an All-Ireland semi-final. You know, look, I would encourage it as much as possible. I know it's not, you know, I'm not sure what the research, I think the research says, you know, the multi-sport, you know what I mean, helps them and all that. I would believe that. I wouldn't have the research to back it up, maybe myself personally, but I would always be reluctant to tell a young guy that they can't play. That'd be a personal opinion. That they can play, it can work. I think it can all the time. And if I just even take out the likes of Fla and Oisin McCormick and guys like that we would have been playing, like the memories that them guys would have had with us, you know what I mean? That's, you know, like, you're developing people here. It's not about winning All Ireland or whatever. It's helping them, you know what I mean? And we wouldn't be true to our philosophy of developing people, I think, if we're saying, "Jeez, you can't play that. You can't," you know what I mean? "Jeez, you're not allowed to do that now." Yeah. Just because I think if they want to play it, it's them. They're the important ones. We can make it work. My God, like, you know what I mean? We're not kind of looking for another vaccine here or anything like that in relation to the sport. You know, it's not like that. So that'd be a personal opinion in relation to that. Just in relation to load, Paddy, again, I wouldn't be an expert on that, but I could just tell you what we do or what we have. We have Actimet is Lucas's. It's an app on the phone and stuff like that. Keynote and Claff will be looking after that. Again, I wouldn't know a little about it, but I know it just in relation to wellness and training load and the data. Keane looks after that, so you get an idea of how they're feeling after training, and it's on their phone, it's handy, it's all. Most clubs have it now, or not most, sorry, a lot of clubs would have it. Corfin were one of the first, I think, to have it. It's a handy one. I don't think it's that dear in relation to it. So I
suppose, Donal, that aids as well in terms of what you mentioned beforehand in the life balance and stuff, that happier players you get more out of them in the long run.
It rates your session. I remember we used to do at minor level, we'd have a sheet afterwards and they'd fill it out and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes that's again, like you don't have the time. That's why it's okay at intercounty level where Keane and Claff are there doing that sort of stuff. Again, with management, if that's something you want to do at the start, you know what I mean? You'd want to get organised. You'd want to, because you don't want, again, back to that first meeting, you don't want to be saying stuff there that's going to fizzle out halfway through the year because it's not busy. The championship coming now, sure. That's why I didn't get that point across maybe at the first meeting. That's why I think that's important, because I've been there. I've said, geez, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, and then all of a sudden, no one kind of pulled me up on it, but I kind of taught myself at the end, Jesus, right? I said I was going to do this and didn't bother, you know. So I'm more careful now, I suppose, with experience, you know. I don't know, did that come up, Paddy? That match day itinerary come up?
Yeah, there? It did. Yeah, it's up there. It's up there on the screen.
Sorry, guys. It's just that's just a normal. We can put that on the WhatsApp. It's just a normal, simple sort of stuff. Just that was obviously we won that game, so we put that one up. But that's the same thing we'd put up even games we'd lost. It's again, it helps them. I think we're talking about ownership and all that. Yes, but on match day we want to take as much pressure, so we go through everything from what they're wearing to reminding them of the messages. You can see some of the messages down there, guys, that I would have spoke of. You know, head, hands, feet. That's the philosophy ones. Tackle, contact. There are different ones, obviously, from coaching. Just stuff like that. Again, reminders, warm up, stuff like that. I don't know if that helps in relation to just match day. and we used to do that at club level as well. And it's a WhatsApp. You do it on a WhatsApp. It's in their phone. They can check it. It used to be handy if you were ever doing an overnight, because guys for breakfast and stuff like that. But nowadays you can get to Dublin a lot easier in relation to that. And just even half time, that's what we do, and that's what we'll be on it for them as well, so they know what's happening. The refuel, feedback from both sides, backs and forwards. We broke into groups, all that sort of stuff. So it's all broken down in relation to that. I don't know if that helps in relation to it.
Just one or two final quick questions on it, because
Yes.
I know we're gone overboard here, but I know a good few people were wondering. I suppose you're a good man to ask this question of, because after all you went through last year with the under-20, but all the remote programs going on at the moment, and all the coaches obviously are chomping at the bit to get back. Would you have any tips for keeping morale and keeping motivation up at this point in time?
Ooh, I'm telling you, I'm the wrong man to ask that question, Paddy. I'm telling you, because I could just tell you what we did last year, and we didn't do much. And the thinking behind it at the time of the first lockdown was, well, I don't know, for everyone it was a little bit scary. It was, we didn't know what was in front of us, all that sort of stuff. So we made a conscious decision to, obviously, S&C and their runs and all that sort of stuff. I'm not talking about that stuff, but other stuff in relation to putting them under pressure and doing stuff. What we did is we took a step back and we told them this, that everyone has their own. We didn't know what was happening in families and all that sort of stuff, but this was just our opinion and this is what we did. And I get that question asked more than once, and people are looking for, geez, what did you do? What did you do? And basically we left them on their own, and it was through I don't know how many lockdowns we had, but 2 anyways. It was similar enough that they worked on their strength and their fitness and their skills, all that sort of stuff. That's obviously, that goes without saying. But I didn't bombard them with we didn't bombard them with anything else in relation to that tomorrow, because again, the ownership of that, we've spoke to them, we had our Zooms here and there and all that sort of stuff, but nothing major. So sorry, Paddy, it's a disappointing answer there, but that's what we did. You know what I mean? We didn't put the thinking behind it was no extra pressure in relation to it, because I think we were preparing for Paddy's Day last year for the semi-final. So we'd won the kind of championship, so there was enough there. You know what I mean? If it was different, if we were starting off, we probably might have done things differently. I'm not sure, but when you're starting off, and we had a bit of our championship done, and so it was, I suppose, easier to make that decision. If we were just starting off, I don't know if we would have done things differently, but that's all we did, in relation to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the final question